Morning Trade Live continues, and now we're looking at Constellation Brands reports its earnings today after the bell. We have a preview. Caroline Woods is with us. Earlier, Garrett Nelson was on with us, and he had a buy rating. He said, we're looking at everything now. We're looking at consumer staples. He liked that name. What are you watching?
Yes, Garrett Nelson has one of the highest price targets on the street, 275. Not the highest. I believe 300, I was taking a look, is the highest. But, almost 60% of analysts are bullish on Constellation heading into this report tonight. Conference call is tomorrow morning. That being said, if you take a look, Constellation has been under pressure really for the past year. Down more than 20% year to date, down some 35% over the past 1 year, and about 38% away from the highs. So, kind of keep that in mind heading into this report. Getting a nice little bounce today, up about 0.5%, has been kind of bouncing back and forth across the unchanged line. This, of course, is the parent company of Modelo, Corona, Robert Mondavi Wines. It's going to be an important one to listen to because I'm sure Garrett also talked about this. The impact of tariffs is real for a company like this. Beer accounted for about 82% of the company's sales when they last reported. Their beer is imported from Mexico. Corona, Modelo, they're subject to that 25% tariff on Mexican imports. Not just for the beer, but also for the empty aluminum cans as well, is also subject to tariffs. Corona comes in bottles, but Modelo, which has become the best-selling beer here in the United States, usually comes in cans. Now, when they last reported back in January, they also talked about subdued spend and value-seeking trends across their consumer base. So we'll want an update on the consumer as well. So for the fourth quarter, adjusted EPS is expected to come in at $2.28 on revenue of $2.13 billion. That's down about 0.4% from the previous year. Beer has been the bright spot. That's expected to continue to see growth, sales up 1.3% to $1.72 billion. Wine and spirits has been the weak link. That's expected to be down 7% in terms of sales to $406.7 million. Outlook for 2026, so this is wrapping up fiscal year 2025, is going to be very important. Keep in mind the expectation that is, for this earnings season, that many of the executives are going to, not necessarily give guidance because there is so much uncertainty. We'll see what Constellation has to say, due in large part to the fact that those tariffs are already implemented. For the current quarter, Wall Street's looking for EPS of $3.70 on revenue of $2.68 billion. That's up a little bit more than 0.5% from the previous year. So, shares now only up about 0.1%, under pressure this month, down about 7% in April. So one might say the bar is pretty low heading into this report, but we'll see what they have to say, both when they report today after the bell, but also on that earnings call tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so much under this umbrella. I mean, I think Svedka vodka may be on there too. The wine is interesting, the beer story, and more people have been drinking beer, but what will the beer demand be? What will the tariffs be? Does it even benefit these companies to try to give guidance when you have so much uncertainty at this moment? We'll see, right? I mean, this is like a big story here.
Well, and that 25% import tariff has already gone into effect. So it's more, what will the prices look like? And will consumers pull back on their beer drinking? Will they, Modelo, as I said, is the #1 beer here in the U.S. Will that change if prices are higher? So
Do they go back to Bud Light? Remember, they all sort of jumped away from Bud Light.
Doesn't seem like they'll be drinking Robert Mondavi based on the expectation of continued sales declines in the wine and spirits business. And we know, consumers, especially here in the U.S., have been even shifting away from alcohol. There's a lot more sober, curious people. I think the younger generation seems to be more into, cannabis and weed and such versus, alcohol. So we'll see what they say, especially since they were already talking about a value-oriented consumer even before these tariffs were put into place.
True, and this generation has been drinking less than prior generations. You make a great point. And if champagne is going to be extremely expensive with the tariffs, maybe people will look to this. Caroline Woods, thank you. A good look there, a preview for Constellation Brands. And now, Scott Bauer is here, CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. You're watching this, and in fact, you have an example trade for us. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Nicole. And yeah, just like any of these other stocks out here, it's so difficult to pinpoint what they may say on earnings, not just about what the results are, but obviously what guidance is, right? Walmart came out, made some announcements about guidance moving forward that they have no idea. We're going to see that from, pretty much every company across the board here. So when I look at a situation like this where there's just a lot of confusion and technicals and fundamentals on how a stock is performing really don't, show me much. What I want to look at is the option premium and what is the market pricing in for a potential move. So with Constellation, market's pricing in about a 10% move or so, 16, $17 either way here. With the stock price at 170, that doesn't really jive. The 152 and a half on the downside, 187 and a half on the upside. There's not really anything sticking out there. So what I'm looking at doing is harvesting premium. I am going to sell this week's 172 and a half straddle. So that means selling both the call and the put. Sorry about that. That means selling both the call and the put and buying next week's 172 and a half straddle. So I can do that swap, pay about $3. That is my maximum risk. If there is a blowout move on Constellation one way or the other, that's my risk. If this stock stays anywhere within that 10% range-ish, upside, downside, this is going to be a really nice position to own.
All right, thank you for that. And we'll watch Constellation Brands today after the bell and the potential big moves that we may see, but not too big. We'll see what we get. And in the meantime, what are your thoughts on the markets now? We have some up arrows today. Should I look before I say that? Okay.
Yeah, I know, exactly,
down now.
right?
I have to look because a moment ago, a short time ago, it was up 350. Now it's down. So that's the point. Yep. Going forward, I mean, how are you approaching this uncertainty?
Traders love volatility. We do. I love volatility. When you get to a point like this where there is excess volatility, and I'm not just talking about a VIX spiking above 50 for a moment in time or so. When you get this excess volatility where the market can move literally on a tweet, as we know, it is very difficult trade. So I am pulling back quite a bit right now. I am looking for opportunities where, unlike Constellation, where we just talked about there's nothing really fundamental or technical on the charts here, I've got to really adhere to whatever I'm trading to make sure that I am at a buy point, a sell point, whatever it is. Overall, though, Nicole, I am looking to sell premium.
So it's interesting. So on the short term, you're enjoying the volatility and doing lots of trading, but for your big picture, maybe you're selling into some strength and putting some cash on the sidelines?
There's no question I'm selling any rip that we can get. Yesterday, when we had the big move to the upside, it was sell time. It is very difficult to buy any dip right now. That can change very quickly here. But with the volatility we're seeing, not just in the equity market, but the bond market as well, obviously, that just throws another wrinkle into things. And sometimes the best trade is no trade.
Yeah. Okay. Scott Bauer, great to see you, CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. Thank you.